Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion, and our second hour is general discussion. So we do Q&A today. So if you've got questions, we'll go as long as you keep asking those questions. So go ahead and throw those into Makana. You can vote those questions up and down. The voting actually matters because it allows us to figure out what we should be talking about. We usually spend a little bit more time on the front end than the back end, so go ahead and throw those into Makana. If you don't have access to Makana, and you might even be watching this at another time, you can just go to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global, or you can use that little QR code. It'll take you to the same place. But if you want to just type it in, askofficehours.global. And let's go ahead and jump into those questions. Mitch, what do we have?
Thank you, Alex. First up, Mike Edwards from Brooklyn, New York. Morning, everyone. I stumbled across this motorized dolly on wheels and hesitant on jumping headfirst into this ecosystem. What is the panel's thoughts and recommendations on this?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, I took a look at it. It's a very lightweight dolly. It's a 3-wheel dolly, and it has one motorized wheel that is driven by remote control with a connection to it. My fear is it's only rated for about 12 kilograms or 26.4 pounds. It does that front wheel. I think you can set the angle on it, but I don't think it actually rotates electrically, so you can't do a variable curve, but you can set it to curve around something. But it looks interesting. I'm not sure what the price of it was. I didn't get
about $1,200. It's $1,190.
But you can't use it with with DSLRs or lightweight video cameras. Work fine. But your typical Arri Alexa, after you outfit it with the batteries and everything else, and you have to have, of course, onboard batteries to do this kind of uncontrolled dolly move. Unmanned dolly move. That it's going to be a pretty heavy camera if you use a professional type camera with a big lens, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think that it looks good. It looks like it would definitely get you some shots. I think the concern that I have is that you'd probably have a lot of vibration. The size of the wheels and the structure of it, you could end up with a lot of bouncing around. So you'd have to have. They don't show it with a gimbal, but I think you would need one. It's something that's going to absorb just a little bouncing that goes along as it works. When it's not working, anytime you're doing something that's like a dolly move without some sort of tracks. The reason the tracks are there to kind of even everything out in a lot of ways. Like one of the things to look at is look at it behind the scenes and look at how many shims are sitting underneath those tracks. And by the way, watching someone build those on the side of a hill is like a work of art. Like you see like 10 people come up and they build a perfectly flat dolly. They're sitting there just leveling it out and adding more shims to it. And they get this perfectly smooth, perfectly flat dolly. That is the most underrated thing in filmmaking, or not, maybe not the most, but pretty close. People go, I just roll it along the ground. Well, the ground goes like this, and it bounces around, and it does a lot of other things. And so I think that you could probably get some shots with it. I don't think you would use it. You would end up using it as often as you think you would. Go ahead, Chris.
My question would be, for the price point, does it include the smooth floor to roll it on?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's some really good ones that do that. There's the Dana dolly, which works off of, I think, standard speed rail. But that's still, again, you're leveling off something that is on rails. I think that Los Mandy makes a jib that has wheels on it, and it had rubber that you can kind of move it around where you want it. But you always needed to have some kind of guide to make that work. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, the Los Mandy would run on this rubber track, which was very strange. But they do have a video.
It worked.
They do have a video here of it running across cables with these super soft wheels. So it says it accommodates little bumps. Maybe that would accommodate the little bumps that you're talking about.
Maybe.
But the fact that it's so light and it only carries 26 pounds, a lot of a dolly stability, like a movie dolly, weighs 600 pounds. It takes 4 grips to carry it up a stair. So this doesn't have enough heft to it. If you hit a little pebble, I think it may be a problem. Or you have to have a perfectly smooth dance floor to run it across, Otherwise, you might see some of those bumps, like you said.
And that's what happens is it's inexpensive to buy. It's just that it may be very expensive to use, and so that's the hard part that you have to kind of always balance. Next question.
Next one in from Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida. Andy asks, what is the best manner to capture a live YouTube stream and restream to another site, with host permission, of course? The original content owner cannot use a reflector like restream.io. Thanks.
There's not, it's never going to be great to do a restream of something because essentially you're doing a screen capture. You're going full screen with YouTube. I would say that you're probably best off getting an Apple TV and using that as the source. The Apple TV feed from YouTube is extremely reliable. So the problem is when you use a PC or a Mac, there's a lot of other things going on in the computer, and you end up with frame drops, as you go through that. And so with an Apple TV, it's pretty focused on what it's doing. Now, you might be able to use a Chromecast as well. I haven't tried it, but I have done it with the Apple TV. And so now you may end up with the Apple TV. I haven't done it recently, and I know that Apple has been tightening the copyright protection on stuff. I don't think YouTube is affected, but if it is, you may have to go through, some kind of converter box, some inexpensive Chinese converter box from HDMI to SDI and back to get rid of the HDCP. And then you would feed that into, you could feed it into any encoder at that point. It's just another HDMI signal for you. I think you will, getting a dedicated device, a Chromecast or an Apple TV, and again, my experience has mostly been with the Apple TV, you should be able to work that should work just fine. And it's not going to be as good as if you did it from a reflector because it's been compressed twice by the time you've seen it. So it was compressed on the RTMP or HLS, ingest into YouTube. YouTube then transcoded it. You're now grabbing that transcode and then re-encoding it again. That creates a lot of generation loss. So you just have to know that that's the case. If they're doing a really high quality stream that doesn't have a lot of dark blacks and that type of thing, or is 4K or really good 1080p, it might be acceptable. But just know that you've got a couple generations in there now. By the time the user sees it, it will have been compressed 4 times at least. so just know that that's kind of coming down the path. But I would use some kind of dedicated playout system to make that happen. Next question.
Paul Wallace from Hot Springs, Arkansas is in with a question. Courtney, any thoughts on the Ubiquiti Dream Machine solution vis-a-vis a more traditional Netgear router solution? Pros and cons of each.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I haven't had any good luck with mesh networks, so I've kind of abandoned them and gone back to wired access points. The Ubiquiti they do make a pro version of a Dream Machine controller that controls all of them, but it's kind of expensive. It's a rack mount device. I don't know if the one you're talking about is this one, which uses is a Dream Machine 4x4. It uses MIMO, and you buy multiple access points. A lot of these that use Zigbee or some other internal signaling method to transmit the sub-channel back, to the different access points. I've had problems with that because it's, all wireless. They have to be close together for the mesh to work, reasonably close together and not too isolated via walls with, in this building, I have Laster and Plath walls, which are pretty good blockers. So that's why I went with the wired with access points.
Yeah, as far as the one advantage to Netgear would be potentially to use a 4250 if you're going to try to do NDI or Dante or anything else over your network. If it's just a home network and you want it to be the right thing for I'm shortly going to probably next month get a Dream Machine and kind of switch my whole house over to Ubiquiti. It's an Amplify, which is, I bought it a long time ago, and I've just put off going through the process of doing it. It's trash, by the way. The Amplify is trash. Don't buy that. So it's also made by Ubiquiti. It's their mesh network, and mesh or not mesh, or even just the home thing, I would never use again. So it looked good when I did it. It was a I could manage a lot of things from my iPhone, and it seemed like a good one to talk about on MacBreak, but it's turned out to really be not a great experience for me. So, but I am looking at going to an overall Ubiquiti network in December, and I'll just be doing a couple, 2 to 4. It depends. Start with 2 and then 4 wireless access points to make all of that work. Next question.
Incoming QR code question from Tyler Wigglesworth from San Dimas, California. I've been given the opportunity to add a second line onto my current cell phone for work purposes. Does the panel have any experience with any second line companies and apps, as I want to be on the same device but be separated? Looking for the best.
Go with Jason.
I think the very best way to do this is with Google Voice. If you're not going to put a second SIM or a virtual SIM in your iPhone, Google Voice kind of always works, and that matters a lot.
Courtney?
Well, you know what I did is when I moved my office to my home, I got the phone company told me, we can't give you the same phone number. You have to change your phone number for your office if you move it to your home because it's a half mile too far away from the central switching office with a wired line. And so what I did is I went to Magic Jacks and just transferred my office numbers to Magic Jack, and the Magic Jack has a it's a voice over IP connection, and it has an app that runs on your phone, and it routes any calls coming to my business phone to the Magic Jack app that runs on my phone. So my phone has its regular phone number, and the Magic Jack receives texts and phone calls from my office phone, and it doesn't cost anything other than an annual like $49 a year for that, and all local calls and texts are free.
And the Magic Jack it's actually connected to like an RJ45, right? I mean, it's like
yes, It connects to your it has a little thing that connects to your home Wi-Fi, your home network, and then it has an RJ.
Isn't it like an RJ11?
No, it has an RJ11 on it.
Yeah, RJ11. Yeah.
It has an RJ45 too to connect to the network,
to the internet,
and then it comes out in an RJ11. But then the fact is that it has the app that runs on any phone, iOS or Android, that then can, whenever your Magic Jack rings, it rings the app, and you can answer it from the app over standard data network on your phone.
Talk about being able to roll with the punches. Like that company has been around for a long time. We used to make fun of it because the ads were so funny. They were so corny. They had such these corny ads. But I had, I think at the height in Pixel Core, I think we had 12 of them because we would use them as our, because they would also go from internet to phone, right? Like we could use them as a way to get to a phone input, from anywhere. So, so they were useful for call-ins for like emergency bridges and stuff like that. So we had them in a lot of our kits. Anyway, I'm surprised. But when I used them, we didn't have an app for it. So they just keep evolving. Some companies can figure out how to do that, and evidently they have. It's cool. Next question.
James Callahan in Las Vegas. Good morning, everyone. I'm looking for a new camera for webcam zoom use and light shooting out in the wild. My budget is $1,000. Please guide me in the right direction. And thank you so much for your attention and participation.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I'm a big fan of Sony, as you well know, so I'm looking for a sub $1,000 Sony camera. I'd say the ZV-E1 or E10. Will get you that autofocus. And I think that's the thing that's changing my decision here for you is that the minute you need to take that camera out into the wild, most webcams aren't going to be very helpful because they're just not very portable. So that's why I'm saying the DSLR type Sony camera.
Yeah, the E10, the E1, or I'm sorry, E10 or Z10, the EVZ10, I think is the one that's under $1,000. With the lens, you'll go under $1,000. If you can stretch it a little bit higher, I would probably, for light shooting outside, as soon as I want to shoot something that matters to me. I don't like the way the lower end Sony cameras. I don't like the way that they record. I don't like the data that comes out of them. I just like the cameras as webcams. So as a webcam, I think it's great. I would pretty quickly move to a Blackmagic camera if I wanted to shoot outside and like shoot things. I think that they're at that price point. I think that they're recording the codecs that they're using are better. Because you can do ProRes, you can do their Blackmagic RAW, and I think those are better than the Sonys at that level. So that'd be the thing that I would consider for shooting outside. But I would say that the Z10 is a great camera it's probably the best camera under $1,000 with lens. So you're going to pay $700 or $800 for it. and then you're going to pay another $300 or $400 for a reasonably good lens. So you're about $1,000, and you're going to have a pretty solid camera. Go ahead, Mitchell.
You know, you bring up the thing about Sony and the recording. Why doesn't Sony make a external recorder? They just have nothing.
Well, you can get external recorders for it. I mean, that's not a big deal. It's just that the internal recording in the camera, I feel like we're going to do a second hour probably in December. We'll try to find a video day that we do this in, is trying to design the perfect camera. That is, it's not like pie in the sky, like, oh, I just want an Airy, but the we want, what are the features that we think are important? I think it needs to be able to record some version of RAW, what you can call it Sony RAW if you want, but not a highly compressed format. I think that it needs to, not overheat, which would be amazing. Because that is one problem with the Z10 or E10 or whatever that is. I think that they need to fix all the names. We call it, some other name. Anyway, I mean, it's just the fact that they play with the same letters and move them around makes it so complicated. So I think that, I realize that we complain about Blackmagic being this or Sony being that, but all the cameras just have their quirks. They've decided to cut corners somewhere to get into the price point that they're at. And, they made their choices. Like, with Sony cameras under $3,000, you're constantly paying attention to whether you're going to overheat. Like, it's just, like the E1 or Z1 or whatever that was $2,200 that I'm sending back is just overheats all the time. Like, it's just, it was twice a day, it was overheating, and and I had the battery replacement. I had the window automatically turn off. I had it open so that it would give more air. I don't, that should be enough for a camera to not, like, for me to have to do all that stuff to make the camera go is more problematic than most of the other stuff that's there. And it's so Sony has a real problem with heat management under $3,000. So you just need to know that. If you're going to use it as a webcam, you have to use the dummy battery, and you have to open the window. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, if you don't use the recording capability and go for a high resolution recording, the heat will definitely go up when you do that. And that brings me to my other beef about all cameras is the lack of media nowadays that you can slide into your camera, whether it's an ARRI or a Sony or anything else for that matter. That media is now very, very critically supplied. I bet in Hollywood it's a real mess.
Well, I mean, I think that it's, you just want to make sure that I want to buy a camera that can put something regular into it. Like that, or I can plug an external recorder into to make that actually work. Like that's another big advantage of the Blackmagic camera is that you plug it in and it's recording the file, the data file. It's not doing an HDMI out. It's recording the data file effectively in ProRes or in Blackmagic RAW and so on and so forth. So that's why, again, that's where Blackmagic has the advantage. Disadvantage, of course, is autofocus and roll. And now all the Sonys at this price are all rolling shutter as well, which is interesting. I was thinking about it last night because I complain a lot about rolling shutter, but I'm kind of amazed they shot all of the Creator with the rolling shutter. I mean, they must have had some kind of post-production process to correct that, and I'm sure that was ugly. Next question.
Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, Canada. Is there a reasonably priced display that is more affordable than an Apple XDR display that will allow me to start dabbling with HDR photo editing and possibly video?
Go ahead, Courtney.
I thought I found a solution. This Koikon G27 5K to replace the Apple Pro display. Everyone is online is talking about this because it's $799, and then only $108 for the stand, unlike $1,000 for the stand for the Apple one. I think it's Chinese made. But then I started looking at the specifications, and it's 5K, 27-inch, but I think it doesn't have the color depth that you need. It's only 8-bit color depth, so you may not be able to do full gamut HDR with it. So maybe Alex has other thoughts on that.
No, I mean, I think that
it does horizontal, vertical. It has all the built-in display port stuff and USB extensions and an Ethernet connection on it. But
yeah, I mean, I think that I think that the if you're trying to match the you can find less expensive monitors, obviously, but if you're trying to match studio display. Now, the Pro display you can probably compete with a little bit. You're not going to be able to go feature for feature with the Pro display. Like as soon as you go feature to feature with the Pro display, the $5,000 or $4,000, $6,000 is pretty good price. You're not going to find. I don't think you're going to find something under $6,000 that matches every single feature that the Pro display has. When you're talking about the studio display, which is at $1,500, there are potentially some BenQ HDR monitors that are in the $1,800 to $2,000 range that are 32-inch, and they are 4K, not 5K. They are HDR 10, and HLG. I don't know if they have the same nit values. I haven't looked at them for a long time. So you can. In that range, they're still going to be in the same range. I don't think that you're going to find a lot. Again, the displays are expensive, but I don't think that there's a lot of people making displays at the same quality that Apple makes at the same price. Like as soon as you cut a couple corners, you can get under that price. But if you're looking for that level of quality, I don't think you can find it. I think Apple has really figured out how to do that. That's the best price you're going to get for that feature set. You just have to decide if that feature set's necessary. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
Alex, what would be the minimum number of nits that you would want for an HDR display in a studio environment?
1,000 minimum. That's table stakes. 1,000 nits. Typically you want 1,000 nits with obviously a peak of 1,500 or something like that. Like 1,000. And so, but that's the table stakes. People will say it's HDR because it's 600 nits, and that's. It's better than nothing, but it's not. But I would say that you should be looking for that if you're really going to do it to work on it. Yeah. Go ahead.
The Koikon is 600 nits.
Right. Yeah. So it's better than 200 nits or 150 nits. So there you go. And it's going to look really nice. But I would say 1,000 nits is what you're looking for. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asking, I've noticed that when I make the prompts, I give GPT 3.5 or 4 more concise, I have a greater chance of getting usable output. Are there any specific tips on crafting quality prompts?
I actually find, you can go, I find that if you really know what you're doing, you give it a really, really long prompt, like pages of prompts. You can oftentimes get a little bit of a, you might be able to get something more what you like, but I have to admit that most of my prompts, 90% of my prompts are pretty short. They are, I'm asking now what the big thing is that I tell it, and this is really important. I've been really, really pondering this thing with ChatGPT is that you tell it what your source is, what you want, and what your target is. And what I mean by that is, explain to me quantum mechanics. Or I first say, you are Richard Feynman. So I've now defined the source. Are you a teacher? Are you a physician? Are you a home, are you, whatever that is, home builder, whatever that is, describe quantum, this is who you are. Describe for me this thing, and this is your target. So you are Richard Feynman. Describe quantum mechanics to a fifth grader. And it'll almost always start, if you do that, with Richard Feynman. It'll go, okay, what was it? Okay, kiddo. I guess he must have said that a lot. I don't remember reading that in lectures on physics, but maybe he said that a lot. Anyway, but the point is that it knows where you want to go. It knows where you want to start, where you want to go, and where you want to end up. And I find that those are the best prompts that I do with ChatGPT is to do those things. And it doesn't have to be much very long. It just has to have those three things in it. And I've been really pondering how often in life you need that. The number one thing that people make mistakes of, they know where they want to get to, and they have an idea of how to do it. Oftentimes where they're standing is not, that they don't accurately, they are connected to what they think it should be or what they think it is. They're just not really paying attention to what it actually is. And then that means that the other part goes way off because they're relating to a fantasy as opposed to reality. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, that's about what I was going to say. I just tested ChatGPT 3.5 because I don't have access to 4. I don't have a subscription. And I found it to be wildly inaccurate. As for anything historical, I ask it questions about myself, or like who invented the first computerized teleprompter, which I know the answer to that one. And it says Hub Shafley did. in 1950. And I point out to that, well, there were no computer displays in 1950, so how could there be a computer teleprompter? And it goes, oh, well, I'm sorry for that mistake. You're absolutely right. And it would make 3 different mistakes,
But again, you can't. What I find is you can't ask the question. You can't ask an open question to ChatGPT and expect an answer. You have to tell it who it is, and tell it what you want, and then tell it where you're going, and then it gets pretty accurate pretty quickly.
But it makes up an answer that's wrong if you don't do that. But I asked the same question. I posed exactly
people
the
on
same
this
question.
panel sometimes make up answers that are wrong.
Well, that's true.
I mean, we do the best we can.
That's true, but we don't have the sum of all human knowledge contained in our brain. Like
you have to realize that the people make stuff up. I mean, we watch TV, and there's a whole bunch of people making up things that are wrong all day.
But the thing is, I asked the same question. I cut and pasted it into Copilot in Windows, and it got it right. And it cited several different articles with the correct answer. ChatGPT just made up an answer which was wrong.
Yeah, it's a work in progress, but so are all of us. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I grew up on radio, being able to ask engineers questions, and I learned that if you don't ask the question correctly, they won't give you a correct answer. So that seems to apply to this too.
I think there was a saying that garbage in, garbage out. But again, I think that what we are going to see is that solution tighten over time, but it just takes time for it to figure it out. I don't take anything that ChatGPT gives me as truth, but I don't take anything I Google or anything someone tells me as truth either. That's a starting point to think about it in all cases. Next question.
Craig Kadoki from Toronto, Canada. Andrew Broughton posted a new video of one of his companion plugins for Yamaha desks handling gain for the Rio stage boxes with meters and a clip reduction function. Any other cool companion finds?
The one that I'm fiddling with, and it's mostly because I've never used it, so I don't know if it's a find. Hold on, I was talking to the I don't know if anybody. I don't know, Jason, are you using companion much?
Yeah, a fair bit, but I don't use Yamaha decks at all.
No, I was talking to Todd Reynolds about sorry, I just want to make sure I say it correctly. It's a it's Vicrio listener that will take companion commands and turn them into keystrokes. And it's because we're having some issues with it, but I was like, I have to figure out how this works. So I'm kind of that's the one thing I'm exploring is Vicrio as a controller, but I don't have an answer yet. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, this particular companion that Andrew's mentioning is asynchronous. In other words, it's giving feedback so that the buttons can update with the meter information, and that's something I really like in a companion application. I wish it was in my Atem Tau mix
effect.
Thank you. I'm having a rough day today. I don't know why. Mix effect, and it's very close. He says is going to be able to give you that feedback. But I think that's what makes anything with Companion and Streamdeck really make a lot of sense. Is feedback between the device you're talking to and what you get back to, visual cue wise.
Feedback is very important in life in general. It's good. It's good. And knowing where you're at. The quick reminder, of course, you can ask questions throughout the hour. You can either you can do it inside of Makana and you can vote on those questions. That's important to us. If you're not a Makana or if you're watching this at some other time, 24/7, you can just ask the question by going to askofficehours.global. You can save that and just kind of pop it up anytime you're interested in asking a question. But askofficehours.global, you can use this little QR code here as well. Let's go ahead and jump into the next question.
Next one in from Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, Canada. Is the Streamdeck only capable of static text on its buttons? It would be neat if you could get something animated in there.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, you can. You just have to do a little bit of work. It'll take an animated GIF, and it'll even actually take a simple video and animate the key. So, yeah, absolutely.
How do you do that? How do you what format is it that you're?
It'll take an animated GIF, and I believe it'll take a PNG-A, but those are a weird enough thing that, like, but the issue really is that if it's too complex a video, it'll just slow to a crawl because it just doesn't have the power to handle it.
Next question.
Andre Dole in Berlin. What do the pedestal settings of a camera do, and when do I need to set it?
Go ahead, Courtney.
If you need something stable, you have to set it on a pedestal. No, pedestal setting is your black level in a video signal. So it adds or subtracts a number from the black level to get it to 0 to adjust, to keep it from going negative. So the pedestal gets it up to 0 if it would be negative in a AC type video signal. That's the pedestal setting. That's your black level, basically.
And in most things that we have, we would call it lift. Like in most apps that we do, lift is I think the same thing as pedestal. It's just, so, and the way you kind of want to think about it is when you see lift or pedestal, gamma and gain, lift sets the center point at the top and scales towards it. So it scales from the top values. So that moves it up and down from there. Gamma grabs the middle and moves it up and down, and gain scales from the bottom. So it pushes it up and down and leaves the bottom. The thing that's the least affected is the bottom part and the top, but it's scaling from the bottom or scaling from the top. That's what that. But I think pedestal and again lift are, I think, the same. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, and you mentioned gamma. That's the one thing I just noticed that is so different from monitors. If you're like in a train station and you're looking at the monitors all the way down the surface, you're looking at it, and the gamma is off on all of them.
Yep. Next question.
Zach Marley from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Does the UpDownCross HD converter have the ability to distinguish 1080 PSF from 1080i? It seems to have dip switches to output 1080 PSF, but the manual does not mention the input. Is the more expensive decimator MDHX required for this conversion?
Go ahead, Courtney.
If you're talking about the Blackmagic UpDownCross, I don't know if it can distinguish 1080. It can't change between segmented format and progressive. The HX will, and it will tell you on the readout what it is. It'll say PSF if it's PSF, or I if it's interlaced. So I would say the decimator MDHX or MD Cross will both tell you that information in the little LCD panel. That's why they're so handy.
Next question.
Vic Sinise in Lowell, Indiana has a QR code question here. What's the best way to send sound to the stream? Analog mixers like the Behringer Xenyx 82S 8-channel analog streaming mixer to the Atem Mic input, or digital mixer like Behringer's FLOW 8 by USB to computer? Why?
It depends on how you're streaming. So if you're streaming from the Atem, then you want to go ahead and do it with the Atem. If you're streaming from something like OBS or something that's in your software, then I would bring the audio in separately. And what you'll have to do if you do that is typically delay the audio a little bit, because when you bring it in as a separate feed, the audio is going to get there faster than the video. So you're going to have to slow the audio down a little bit to sync it back with the video. So that's the only downside of that. I think that that's one of the downsides. When you're running it into software, just make sure that if you're streaming from a computer, it should do very little other than streaming. So a lot of times even when we do production, we try to, if we were using software to stream, oftentimes we treat that hardware as an appliance. Like it's not doing anything else. It's not checking email. It doesn't have anything else going on. It doesn't have any notifications on. It doesn't have anything else going on. It is a streaming box. Like if you're actually trying to make something work well. And anyway, so that's the only thing I would say there. Otherwise, you're looking for something that can embed. Something that's got audio inputs. That for many, many years we used the Pix 240s to do that. We would embed everything into the Pix 240. And I have a project tomorrow that I have to use, and I'm using two 240s. so it's a funny thing. Like I'm still using them after all these years. There's a 1080p 1080p test that I have to do, and I'm doing a latency test where I have to send a signal to somewhere else and have it come back. And I realized the easiest way to do this is to tie the audio the input to the output of one Pix 240 into the other one, but I can still take the SDI feedback and I can record 4 channels. I can have the SDI and the analog in and record it. And that way I have one Pix that's getting the output audio and the input audio at the same time. You know, like
just when you thought it was safe to put it back on the shelf, it comes back out. Also, you can adjust the latency on it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's anyway, it's good. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. As my ChatGPT payment was processed this morning, is it time to move on from paid subscription, or why not?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, you know what, you might, like I was mentioning earlier, I wasn't finding ChatGPT to be too accurate. You might try out, and it's free to try it out. All you have to do is install Microsoft's Edge browser on your Mac, if you're putting it on your Mac or your PC, or it works on both, and use the Bing AI in that. It's available. It opens up a little side panel, and you can set the accuracy of it and ask it questions and have it respond or create things or summarize things or refer to an article that you have open in the browser. It will summarize anything on that web page, etc. So try that out. It's free, and see if it works for you. You may not have to continue your ChatGPT subscription.
I will admit that I'm a big fan of it. I mean, I've been using it. It's super responsive. I have other people that complain about the fact that they're having trouble with, you know, it taking longer or it not being able to spin up at times, and I don't have any of those experiences. So that's the only thing I would say. Next question.
Andre Dole in Berlin asks, what tools are you using to filter Zoom chat for the moderator or a hybrid meeting on stage?
I have this thing called Makana. So I don't really interact with anybody's chat. So all the events that I do, we don't use anybody's comments or chat systems because they're kind of primitive. So I don't know how to. I'm afraid I don't think anybody here knows how to do that. Next question.
Cue the spooky music. What is causing a widespread blackout of shortwave radio in South America?
I'll go ahead, Courtney.
Well, it may be a solar flare, or it may be a disturbance in the ionosphere, which can affect shortwave radio and affects the skip off the ionosphere. So, shortwave radio can skip off the ionosphere and down, and depending upon the position of the ionosphere, the time of year, et cetera, the amount of solar flare, et cetera, it changes hour to hour. That may be what's causing it. Otherwise, it could be some giant jamming signal that someone is putting into South Africa.
Alien invasion. I always thought that South Africa would be the place that an alien invasion would happen. So I think that they're going for the diamonds. They need the diamonds. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, it's a solar X.1, 1.1 solar flare, and it just happens. You got to remember that the Earth is rotating, and when the flare arrives, depending on where the Earth happens to be rotated, that's very simplistic. It's going to affect it, and the word is that because the sun's in a active solar state, that there's a CME on its way to us right now.
Oh, really? So we got a couple days.
Yep.
Nice.
Not a big one, but big enough.
Big enough. Yeah. We're in 2 more years, I think, of solar activity. The sun goes through these cycles of a lot of sunspots and a lot of solar flares and potentially CMEs, and so we're in that for the next couple of years. And so you'll see more things like this. The aurora borealis tends to be more exciting. You'll see radio breakouts. A CME can take out. I mean, it took out half of Montreal in the end of the 80s. The last time we really saw a really big one that we noticed, at least, that hit the Earth was the Carrington event in 1859, and that would probably take out most of North America if it hit. I mean, they saw the aurora borealis in Cuba.
Melted all the telephone lines too.
Yeah, the telegraph lines caught fire, like the telegraph switches. So imagine that was in 1859. Imagine what happens if it hits now. So when I spent way too much time studying CMEs. We're lucky right now, but eventually we won't be. So that's why we should probably not completely depend on our computer-based support systems because of that. Next question.
Next one in from Danny Grizzle in Longview, Texas. AI source question target query structure. Where I'm heading with this is to realize a decades-long dream of institutionalizing the experience of individuals, an opportunity for video producers who can transcribe doc work with experts.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. Like that, it is definitely something that there is so much learning content potential out there in the world right now. And we've barely scraped the surface of how to do that. And I think that the thing that is scraping the surface the most is YouTube. Like you can go up to YouTube and watch someone build a great video about something, but it's still hit and miss on that area. But when you think about, there's so much in the ability to engage people and get them excited about something. Wetware is something that I think is highly, that's people. We tend to call it wetware. We say, is this problem a hardware problem, a software problem, or a wetware problem? And do you build another piece of hardware to fix this? Do we improve the software and the interface to fix this, or do we teach people how to use the product? And I think that they vastly underestimated the cheapest way to increase value in a product is wetware development. It is doing the training. It is letting people know, what's there. And I think that, we haven't, I think that I get excited when we look at all these things getting easy and everyone says, well, it's now easy and everyone can do it, but there's so much to do. There's so much to do. We still have 40,000 physics teachers teaching momentum instead of showing everybody a video. so like that's insanity. Next question.
It's Robert Gramling from Milwaukee, Wisconsin asking, morning all, been seeing articles about kits to make your old film camera into digital. My old Pentax SF1 with lots of glass wants to know. Panel?
Now go ahead, Mitchell.
I'm very skeptical only because it's such a precise and machined device when you have a sensor and now you got reflex glass that you're dealing with. It'd be cool. I'm just very skeptical about the precision involved in making that happen.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I think it would be a lot. I mean, as a hobby project, it might be interesting just to, do something with that old Pentax, but you got to deal with, a mirror reflex that you got to get up out of the way. And then you got to have since the mirror is going to be out of the way and the focal plane shutter isn't going to be used anymore. You've got to have some way of monitoring your image real time. So you got to add a monitor to it, et cetera. Seems like a lot of work, and it's going to require bigger batteries that won't fit in the camera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know.
I would
like a good idea.
I would try to figure out how to adapt the glass to another camera as opposed to trying to adapt the camera to the glass. That'd be my focus. So I don't know what it takes to do a Pentax glass to a new camera, but there's got to be an adapter somewhere. Next question.
John Foltson, Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. On Fenwick's SoundDesk mix pre setup, how do you get audio to the speakers? Do you come out of the mix pre? Do you use headphones from the Mac? Do you use an audio interface? What do you do?
Mr. Fenwick, do you have speakers and do you send things to them? He's muted. He wasn't paying attention. So
I wasn't paying attention at all. You caught me.
Read the question again. Read the question again. That's fine.
So how do I get audio to the speakers? What I do in my setup is I create my SoundDesk output module has 6 outs. And those 6 outs give me the ability to listen to 2, to send 2 to Zoom, and the 5th and 6th output I actually, in Loopback, when you create a monitor column, which you may have to turn on, if you don't actually turn on the monitor column, which is the far right column, you won't even see it. But if you turn on the monitor column, you go, oh, and then you create an output to the last set of things. Now, and I can show you this. I have to move I have to obscurify one screen and go like this. And those last 2 outputs I send to this output, the stereo output, and those are my 5/6 outputs. So if I turn this up like this, and y'all talk, it'll come off of my speakers. But if I turn it down, there's a little scrolling there because of screen zooming. But if I turn it down, I kill my speakers, and it's the easiest, quickest way to say up, out to the speakers, no, out, and then. If we go one step further, The loopback, let's see if loopback launches quickly enough. Sometimes it doesn't. I'm about to replace this computer, by the way. But yeah, I can show you right here. And then the SoundDesk output module is this one. So, and this is what I mean. This monitor's column has to be turned on, and I just send it to the output device called my iMac Pro speakers. Now, if you don't want to send it to built-in speakers on a monitor or whatever, and I just do it for convenience so I can listen to people talking if I walk away, you could send it to another output device. Maybe you have one of those wonderful Focusrite Scarletts laying around that Alex hates so much, and you want to hook it up to like some powered speakers. You just make that output, you know, that device, and you turn on your powered speaker. So if I was, you know, I gotta admit, as an editor, I haven't listened to things on speakers since the beginning of COVID. I shouldn't admit that to my audio friends, but I haven't. But that's what I would do, is I'd hook up, you know, powered speakers to another output device.
Next question.
And it's from Paul Ross in the United Kingdom. So I'm looking to get a radio broadcast mixer that works with Dante DVS for internet radio. I'm having a hard time finding a mixer that works with DVS, as they only seem to work with Dante AES 67. Why is this, and is there a mixer that could work?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Radio broadcast consoles are a very specific use case. Now, granted, any mixer could work in a radio environment, but traditionally are not. There's only like 4 or 5 really big players in the radio broadcast world, and they all have different specifications on their communication. Their IP is not compatible across units. Axia from Telos, Wheatstone, in your neck of the woods, Close. They're all different, every single one of them. What I would do, if you want the radio and it's for internet and money is an object, I'd buy a used analog board, sort of like what I've got over here, and use a Dante AVO to get it from analog or from AES EBU over into Dante. It's a simple way to do it, and if you have 16 channels, that might get expensive, but if you only have like 3 or 4 channels for a internet station, these guys will save you a lot of trouble. It's the way to go. Sorry, it's upside down.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, unless you really actually need an FM console, get an X32. They're really great, and they could do just about everything.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and I think I was kind of looking into, I don't know if it would qualify as a radio console, but this interface that Audinate actually makes is the AEQ capital IP. It's a 16 IO interface. Maybe that would work for you, but like Mitch says, a lot of times a radio console has special stuff like Q channels and the way to listen to stuff off air before you put it on. You can probably, you know, do all of that in software with this control panel, but it would take configuring. If you're used to a certain type of console, getting it into Dante, you might be better off with the outboard Dante converters like Mitch was showing.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, my wish is that all of them will get together someday and agree on a specification, because it would make things a lot easier than having these proprietary communication specifications to get audio over IP.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about whether yeah, I have to think about it. I don't have an answer for that yet. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, the Atomos Ninja seems to be a Swiss Army knife device, recording, streaming, etc., not just a field monitor. How well does it work for those ancillary tasks?
You know, I don't use a lot of Ninjas, you know, and it's just mostly because I've used so many other monitors, and they haven't fit into the model that I've used there. In the handful of times we've used the Atomos, we've been really happy with it. I will say the company is going through some turmoil, so it has me like a little less excited about jumping on their hardware at the moment until they sort some of those things out. But they've been good products up until now. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
The idea of what the Atomos does, I think, is a good one, and I think that sort of ties into with your idea of coming up with the perfect camera or external recorder. It's a much better way to record off of a camera, as far as I'm concerned, unless you've got some rig like an Arri or a Sony Venice. But having that Atomos on there gives you the ability to get much more flexibility on the media you're using and the amount of recording you're doing.
For cameras that don't have a raw record, like, or if they can, I think Atomos does raw record out of some of the cameras. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, you might look as a substitute. You might look at the Blackmagic Video Assist 12K, which I think has a UVC out for USB-C webcam support. It does local recording in MDHX and in ProRes 444, I think. And it has all the great monitoring and indicators on screen for you to look at, meters and things. So you might look at that. I don't know I haven't used the Atomos, so I can't really comment on how well they've come along. Maybe they've just built in streaming over IP as well.
Next question.
Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, Canada, asks, the new Photomator update has a smart HDR feature that can automatically write changes back to iOS Photos library. Has anyone played with this?
Haven't played with it, but it looks really interesting. So I have Pixelmator. I haven't used it for a little while. I usually mostly use Affinity Photo, but this seems like an obvious thing that I'm glad that they finally did, which is, all that data is open, so you can figure out how Apple wants to save this. I'm guessing that what they're doing is saving the result or the vision data metadata over top of the HLG the same way that Apple does with the phone, and so that would allow them to do that. I'm not 100% sure that that's what they're doing, but it's highly likely, and that data is something that anybody could write. So hopefully more people will do it. Next question.
Next question coming in from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. I'm using Companion to control my PTZ optics cameras. Is there a command that would allow me to have a camera pan slowly from point A to point B in a left to right motion to have a 180-degree field of view?
Go ahead, Jason.
Yes, and you're not going to like it. So what you do is you go in and you set preset 1 to where you want to start, and then preset 2 to where you want to stop, and then you open the camera's OSD, navigate to PTZ, and then get to call preset speed, adjust your movement speed, and then return to the OSD menu. Then you go into setup and scan and then auto shoot, and it may have to reboot, but basically that combination of things will allow it to do what you need. I'll put a link in Mukana.
Next question.
Jeff Greenberg in Delaware asking, matching a lav, a re-record wasn't done with the same mic, and I have a process, but I'd love to hear the panel's view. Assume I have a lav audio on site, room tone, recorded audio. A budget plugin is allowed in any host except PT.
So I have done this in many, many ways. There's different plugins that will match this. There's a lot of automatic ways to do it. And then I finally just ended up just doing it by ear. So after all the plugins and everything else, it always ends up like, when you hand it off to something automatic, it kind of, if it doesn't hit it, matching this, someone's got an open mic and they are typing. When you're matching the audio, I just find that if you're not 100% on, it doesn't matter. And so I end up just fiddling with it until I'm happy with it and they feel like the two of them fit together. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, the old ways seem to work well. A little bit of EQ in the right situation. But today, if you have an impulse from the room that was originally recorded in, you can essentially recreate the room tone, which is probably the biggest factor next to the mic and the voice. So that's one way I would do it. The best way to do it, of course, is to go back to where it was recorded with the same mic and get it fixed.
Next question.
Next question from Douglas Carmichael. How do you set up a Zoom meeting with an interpreter? Is the interpreter another meeting participant, or does Zoom route participant audio to and from the interpreter on their end?
Yeah, so on the back end of Zoom, I don't think I can open it up and show you right now, but in the back end of Zoom, in the web interface for the actual event, you would go in and you can define interpreters. So at the bottom of when you're creating the event, you're defining how many interpreters and what languages they are, and then Zoom creates new windows that people can see in the event. And then what someone can do is open that one up, and they're going to hear that interpreter. So it is building a separate audio pipeline to make that actually work, and it's fairly effective. So anyway, it's actually a really good feature that we've used quite a few times for. I don't think we've used more than 4, but I think it's fairly unlimited. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia asks, Conversations with Tony Mobley is being produced with a basic Mac Mini and my M1 Pro MacBook Pro. Mimo Live, Parsec, Cloudflare, Zoom, NDI, etc. What machine should I look for?
I do the a similar thing to do the graymatter.show with Michael Krasny on. Right now we're between spaces, so Michael actually comes over to my house. he sits in this desk, and I'm doing a similar thing. Now I'm doing it on a studio. That's the only difference. I'm doing it on a Mac studio, and it's barely running. Like it's barely. I think you could probably do it with an M1 Pro or M2 Pro would probably do just fine with it, but I do it on a studio and it works very well. The only troubles that I have are trying to figure out all my audio pipelines. So that's the only thing that I get myself into. Next question.
Andre Dole in Berlin asked, how do you slate your recording of a live event? You won't do it short before the event starts with audience in the room, but you won't start recording an hour early.
How do you how do you slate your recording? I don't quite understand that. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, you just open a microphone that goes to the recording and not to the room and not to the stream. So you just make sure your microphone is only feeding the recording in, feeding into the recorder and not to the rest of the stream of the room. And then you just slate it right before the thing starts.
Yeah, if that's what you're doing. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how you're defining slate. So I just don't know what slate means in that context. Yeah, I mean, and generally we start recording. We start recording an hour ahead of time, but we do start recording usually about 15 minutes ahead, or at least one of our records turns on about 15 minutes ahead. And then usually we have one that's very near the top, so that if we have to cut something and hand it to a client, they don't have a bunch of junk. But we always have the backup recording much earlier, so that if we forget or we get into a fire and we don't have a person that's just managing that, we still have records. Usually we have a couple records going by 5 minutes, and then the final record that we hand to the client oftentimes is queued almost right before the start of the show. That just means that we have a nice clean one. They don't get to hear a bunch of other stuff that wasn't going on, and it also is a smaller file to send, which sometimes matters. Next question.
QR code coming in from Michael Reyes in McLean, Virginia. What kit and equipment would the crew suggest for remote on-location live streaming, such as streaming from a factory floor or, say, a department store? Is cellular satellite service a consideration regarding data streaming? Thanks.
I mean, if you're doing a walk around, that's what it sounds like. You're doing a walk around, and you have good, if your cell phones are working well, I'd be very tempted to use a live view. Live view cellular would work pretty well. So I would really, really think about that. You can use if you don't, or if you need a backup, then satellite is a great way to do it. And you can use obviously Starlink, but when we do it for production, we're typically putting a sat truck outside. A KU is fine. If you think it might be raining, then a C-band, but that's a really big truck, and it's about 50 to 100% more expensive than a KU truck, and it takes like 3 parking spots instead of 2. So it's but you can put those satellite, and all you got to do is be able to see the southern sky if you're in North America, and you can usually find a satellite. And there's great apps, mostly on Android of all things, that will let you find those satellites. AR, you can just look up with your phone and see satellites, see where the satellites are, so you can get an idea of what your point of reference is. Next question.
Greg Gibson from Washington, D.C. Just a PSA, 2.0 firmware for the Sony FR7 has dropped or been made available. Notable is the ability to use third-party motors to zoom non-PZ lenses, 70 to 200 millimeter, 2.8, plus improved preset functions.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, so noted. Very good. Next question.
Next question coming in from Guy Cochran in Seattle. What did you actually buy on Cyber Monday?
Nothing. I thought about things. I just didn't end up buying anything. I thought I would. I was excited about it, and I just didn't actually buy anything. So that was I saw some really good deals, but yeah. Anyway, we're gonna end short because we don't have as many questions. So we're doing a 1-hour show. We haven't done that for a little while. Just a quick reminder, by the way, outside of our show, Mary Plumer is doing this is not this is not promoted or anything else. I'm just letting you know that there's a DaVinci Resolve audio class next week, the 4th through the 8th. It's like 1 to 5 p.m. PST. Mary Plumer is one of my favorite trainers. Like, I just really love watching her. I've only watched pieces of this course. I never have time to sit down and watch the whole thing. If you have time, it's free. It's and if you have time, we'll post it in Discord. But I think it'd be fun if a lot of us did that. All right, we are going to go into the break here, and then we're going to come back and say goodbye. Come on, bye. We still have a break. It's automated. If you're watching this and you're like, why did they break? And then do one more question. We've automated that because we're getting ready to start slicing these shows. And so there's no way to stop that, even if we only have one more question. I was trying to I have to admit that I was kind of like, well, just close off these questions and then we'll just say goodbye. But we didn't have enough time. So I don't want to end quickly. So anyway, let's go to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael asked, what interesting audio plugins have you found lately?
You know, I think I don't know, 2 years ago, I bought so many Wave plugins and then I didn't use many of them. And I just decided I didn't want to get any more plugins. There was something about it. I spent a bunch of money. They weren't not that much money, $150, and I evidently saved $1,000 or something like that. But I just was like, oh, I'm just going to use what I have. And it's really hard to get me to add another plugin to pretty much anything, you know. So I think that's the yeah, I've been resistant to doing that. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I'm all full up here on plugins for audio. I have all the Waves packaged plugins, not all their plugins, but all the packaged ones like Platinum and Restore and all that. But interesting developments over at Isotope. They're getting very competitive pricing-wise. Might have something to do with their new purchase owner. The Isotope plugins are really good, so that's one area I'd like to expand into.
I mean, those are the ones that I use. So those are the ones that I use all the time to clean stuff up, you know. And it's like the Deverb and the Pop and the couple of denoise. Those are all the ones that I've used pretty heavily. I will admit that there was a big sale on Isotope, and I pay a monthly thing to have it. And I thought about switching over, but I just hate iLok with a passion. Like, it just makes me angry thinking about it. And so I won't buy the Isotope stuff until they get rid of that trash. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, mirroring what everyone else has said, Isotope Ozone is absolutely amazing. It's worth what it costs. If you don't own it, just look at the demos. It's fantastic. And that said, I own too many computers. I hate managing plugins. I would rather spend my money on hardware because at least it does one thing and that's it.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Alex, I'm so sorry I have to do this, but I'm gonna support iLok, because if you're a traveling audio person that goes to multiple studios, particularly if you're doing Pro Tools, it's the one thing that you can carry all of your plugins and all your setups with you and plug it in locally. Yeah,
I don't do that, and I hate it. The software version of it is just a disaster. I mean, I'm sure that it works well when you move little dongles around.
Yeah, the key works, but ugh.
Just drives me nuts. I spent so much time dealing with it. Like, I just don't like if you're going to do something like that, it's got to work. It's got to work all the time. Like a Mac user wants it to work, not like a PC user wants it to work. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Are you going to do a time lapse of building the Sausalito studio?
We've talked about doing that if we can get the bandwidth for it. We haven't gotten around to it yet, though. So we haven't gotten the bandwidth to that. And they're doing a bunch of upgrades, and unfortunately, we just haven't been able to get down there and get time lapses up. So I don't know how much. It's partially built already, so it's not like it's coming up from scratch. But we'll do the best we can. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, when you talk about slicing the show, what workflow are you using to automate the process?
None right now. We're just trying to figure out how to get good at doing it. So, I mean, we're looking at Opus.ai to do it. And then we're also looking at a ChatGPT, plugin for it, like to build one in ChatGPT now that these APIs are wide open. And the idea is to, we're trying to figure out exactly what that process would look like. Do we just generate an EDL? Do we generate how are we trying to do that automated process? Cutting it is not that hard. And if someone wants to run a team that figures this out, that'd be great. We don't, because it's happening in very small spurts as we slowly figure those things out. Next question.
Paul Wallace, Hot Springs for Arkansas. Cat 5, 6, 7, and 8. What's the difference?
Go ahead, Courtney.
The speed of the data you can transmit over them is the difference. If Cat 5 is up to 100 megahertz, data transfer rates up to a gigahertz. Cat 6 is 250 megahertz, so 1 gigabit. Cat 7 is 600 megahertz up to 10 gigabit. So if you're planning on using a 10 gigabit switch in your house, you need to run Cat 7, and I don't know what Cat 8 is. I thought they only had 7 lives.
Go ahead, Jason.
I'll pick it up where that left off. Cat 8 is nearly identical, but the way that it's terminated is a lot less weird.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
And I guess I have to ask the question, what is the physicality difference between 5, 6, 7, and 8? Is it a bigger cable? Is it a different twist? What makes it different?
It's everything from the gauge to the way that each twisted pair is wrapped, to the number of wraps and the thickness of the wraps and the tolerance physically of the entire thing.
Next question.
Cindy Drozda from Erie, Colorado. Have any of you live streamed to Discord? And what was your experience?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I have done it before, and it's not a pleasant experience. I think everything else about Discord is great, except their live video. It's not pleasant.
Yeah, I mean, there's nobody that I know that has been really successful at it. Like, you know, and all of us have like, oh, this would be cool. We do this inside of it. It's a very limited number of people. It is quirky to do it. It is not stable. I mean, now I have not, to be fair, I've not tried it in probably 8 months. Like 8 months ago, I was like, oh, I'm going to try it again. And then I was like, oh, this is still horrible. So they just don't know how to, they don't have a lot of expertise in this area. And I think people are doing quirky little versions of it. Hopefully it'll get better. But it's people who are using it are people who have never live streamed anywhere else. And they think that this is great because they don't have any point of reference that it's really, problematic. So we'll, we keep on testing it to see if they can make it better, but we wrote it off pretty quickly. Next question.
Next one in is from Pedro G. Gonzalez from Oklahoma City. What lenses are you using with your FX30, and what lenses perform the fastest focusing on the Sony mirrorless cameras?
So I admit that all the lenses that I'm buying for the Sonys are G series, and they focus really fast. So I don't know what this is the speed at which it's focusing there, and you can see it come back. So they're fast. I'd rather just buy this is a buy once, cry once kind of situation where I'd rather just buy the one that I know will work. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, there's a lot of goodness happening inside that lens talking to the camera. And if you stay with Sony, you're going to get the fastest possible speed because they've tested it with it. On my FX3, which is very similar to the FX30, I've got a 24-70 2.8 Grandmaster or GM, whatever that stands for. And it's pretty darn fast, as Alex was just showing. The next closest competitor to them that I would consider as a lens is Sigma. They're just slightly slower, but a lot cheaper.
Next question.
Next question from Paul Wallace in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Jason, is anything in your background functional, or are they just props?
Paul. Like everything. Absolutely everything is 100% real. See that? Yeah. There you go.
There you go. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. I can upgrade my iPhone 13 Pro Max in 4 months. Should I get 15 or wait for 16 Pro Max?
You're right if it's 4 months, you're right on the precipice of when I would say just wait. Once you get within 4 or 5 months of September, I usually just wait. So you're right on the edge. I'm just going to hang on to this until I get to the next one. There's no reason not to. I don't think unless there's some feature on the 15 that you really need, and you're going to get a free upgrade. I don't know how that works, but you're going to get a free upgrade for it or whatever. I would just wait for the 16 in March or April. You're too far away from the. Let's see if you'd be March, end of March or early April. I would just wait until the next rev, in my opinion. Next question.
Danny Grizzle in Longview, Texas. Anybody using Spectral Layers 10? Originally marketed by Sony Broadcast when I first purchased, there is currently a deal from Steinberg, which now markets Spectral Layers.
I I have not used it. I think someone was just suggesting. I think Mickey was talking about it, or someone was talking about how much they like it in the forum. But I don't have enough. I don't have any experience with it. Again, I've been kind of become an anti adding more plugins because I just don't use them enough person. But it does look like a pretty powerful setup. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I used it ages ago when Sony owned SoundWave. Excuse me, SoundForge, which is one of my favorite waveform editing systems, and it's a cool way you can get very precise in how you deal with certain things.
Yeah, I mean this is using the this is a spectral audio editor. So what I've used in the past that does this is this is also built into, I think, Audition. Adobe has its own version of this where you can literally circle sounds and just say, get rid of that, and it'll just take it out. And so I don't know the one that I have experience with. So what this does is that you can see the spectrograph or spectrogram of the image. And so it's all, and you're basically, it's almost like doing photo editing to clean things up. And you can take a lot of really interesting things out of stuff. But the place that I've done that in the most is in Audition, and it's worked really well. Next question.
Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois. After traveling by flying, I find the pressure changes causes my hearing to take sometimes days to readjust. How do people with jobs depending on accurate hearing deal with flying and pressure changes?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, I try to never fly with a cold, but you may not have to be able to deal with that depending upon if you have a job that starts on a certain day. Take a decongestant the day before or the night before you fly to try and clear out your head before you get on the airplane. Maybe try and not fly on a jet that doesn't have very good pressure settings, the ability to maintain cabin pressure evenly and gradually change. I find that sometimes the bigger jets, the jumbo jets that are going transcontinentally, fly higher, and it's more of a problem there than the smaller ones, the puddle jumpers that don't go as high an altitude or aren't qualified for as high an altitude. But it depends on the airline, really. Your mileage may vary.
Go ahead, Jason.
Well, so the first thing is don't sleep on an airplane. And the second thing is learn how to readjust your eustachian tubes. That's really what's going on here, is that you have a pressure difference between your ear canal, your inner ear, and your outer. So I'll give you maybe one or two ridiculous ways to do this. There's one called the Valsalva maneuver, which is pinch your nose and then keeping your mouth closed, try to blow air into your nose gently. Second one is the Frenzel maneuver. Pinch your nose closed and use your tongue to kind of try making a clicking sound. That can work for other people. Third one is pinch your nose and try swallowing.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, when you're in the flying aluminum tube of despair, my dad used to give me a stick of chewing gum, and that worked great.
I use chewing gum. I still do after all these years. And I also just am very good at swallowing. So I'm constantly swallowing as we land, and it kind of just keeps on going. But yeah, I've had the worst ones are when you have a really bad cold, and then it's just, there's not anywhere for anything to go. So yeah. Next question.
David Brady in New York, New York. I found an EV666R in a storage closet at work. I'd like to test it out and make Paul Wallace envious, but the XLR jack has a flat proprietary design. Are these connectors readily available?
The answer is no. Like I was looking at, I saw your question, and I've been sitting there looking over trying to find it. So what happens is this XLR has like a flat off, in it, and it's and so it's a slightly different cable, and so it is pretty hard to find that cable. I think you may have to get out some. There may be a little bit of a little MacGyver lab that might be required here. Go ahead, Courtney.
I found one. It's only $65.
Is it available?
Electrovoice 666.
It says sold.
It's used. Oh, too bad.
Yeah, it says sold. No, it's. You're
gonna have to get a used one. Yeah,
you have to get a used one, or you're gonna have to start to machine something or print something out. But it is a. I've seen they're definitely, you can find them on the web so you can see what they look like. You just can't find any of them that actually exist. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Can't you just snip the wire and put a regular XLR on it?
No. I mean, this is part of the mic. It's the end of the mic.
So it's on the end of the mic. Goes into the mic.
The mic
connector
itself on the end of the mic. Yeah.
So it's not like the old Amphenol.
No, it's a flattened out area. Yeah. So it's not. Yeah, it's not it's part of the mic. You can't just cut something off. Well, you could cut something off, but it won't work nearly as well. Next question.
Next one in from Pedro G. Gonzalez in Oklahoma City. Looking for a good audio interface for one XLR mic. I want clean audio, but I don't want to spend mix-pre money.
One mic. You don't want to spend mix-pre money. I'd probably say the Zoom F3. Like, it's not one input, it's two. So you get stuck with two inputs. It's not mix-pre money, but they're relatively good. Does 32-bit float. It'll act as an interface, I believe. I haven't used it, but I've seen other, the F series that Zoom does is a pretty good thing. If you, the other thing that you can use, if I have one around, this is the other thing that I've been using, which is fine. I mean, the preamp isn't as good as the mix-pre, but this is the Shure MVX2U. And so what this is this is an XLR that just pops into the back of your mic. So this goes into the back of your mic, and then it's USB-C on the other end, and it's got a headphone connector on it for zero latency. And this is about $130. So this turns any mic into a online mic. So anyway, I've been experimenting with this so far, happy with it. But the old one used to have some controls on it. This one doesn't, but you control it through software and then leave it set that way. Next question.
Next one in from Pedro G. Gonzalez in Oklahoma City. Does anyone have any experience live streaming with an IP-based security camera, RTSP, and what is the experience like?
I've done RTSP, haven't done it with the security camera. Go ahead, Jason.
I've gone a security camera locally into something and then used the rest of my equipment, but no, straight up, absolutely not.
And the biggest problem with the security cameras is they're just not very. The video quality coming out of them is hard to compress well. So that's the big challenge with those cameras. But yeah, you should be able to do it. And there's a lot of different ways to capture that signal. A lot of streamers will be able to do it. You should be able to stream it to something that you could stream it to. Most of your ingest, if you're trying to go to YouTube or go to something else, you're going to have to convert it to something that someone can watch. And most people aren't. RTSP is typically a mezzanine format, not a delivery format. So that means you're going to use it to get to something, but then you're going to have to convert it to RTMP to get to YouTube or many other things. Or HLS if you wanted to build a player that's going to actually be available to the public. So there's a couple other things you want to do there if you're trying to get it to other people. All right. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to all the great questions from the producers. We actually just burned through. Oh, we got one more question. Go ahead. Next question.
Here we go with Danny Grizzle from Longview, Texas. Good for waiting the last second here, Danny. I use a couple of Behringer XR18 mixers and was thinking about buying another one for a location live streaming kit I'm building. What I see online are lots of bad reviews saying Behringer's not maintaining iPad software for the latest iOS.
I don't know. I haven't used the XR18 for a while, so I don't know if it's falling behind or not. But I think a lot of times they've had trouble. Their Behringer is having trouble right now with just general customer support. so that's so I think getting things back and everything else has been more challenging. Again, the X32, especially the rack, has been a real workhorse for a lot of us, just because it's easy to put in, slide into things, and it's not very expensive. But I think that they're having some trouble in keeping up with things right now, and I'm not sure exactly what's going on their end. Thanks so much to the producers for all the great questions, and we really appreciate. And we just burned through them really quickly too. It's a smaller panel, so we move a little bit faster. Thanks to everyone for the great questions that you put in here. And thanks to the panel. Can't do this without you. It's nice. I kind of like cozy panels every once in a while. So these are so thanks to the panel for being part of this conversation, and thanks to the incredible team that is building all of this on the back end, the software development, the hardware configurations, as well as the planning and management. There's a lot of meetings that you don't see that this team puts together, as well as finally the incredible team that's cutting this together and making it happen every single day, 7 days a week, 365 and sometimes 366 days of the year. We really appreciate everybody's effort. We traveled, and I moved my windows around. We traveled 68,000 miles. That's 110,000 kilometers answering all these questions. And that is more than, I can't find it. I lost my banana. It's more than 543 million bananas for scale. I don't know what happened to my banana.
It's scaling.
It's scaling. I redid I tore apart my desk and then was up. I don't know whether you say, and that's it. I don't know. We haven't gone to credits yet. So I think no one's used to going to credits at 8:19. Anyway, I redid my desk because it was turning into a giant hive, and you have things set a certain way, and you leave them there for a couple of years, and then you go, why did I do that? That was the dumbest thing ever. And then you try to do it again, and you're like,
the cable monster grows. Like,
well, no. But I had to
time.
Let's jump into after hours. Sorry, I didn't understand. So, what was I going to do? What was I going to say? Oh, I said it. I said whatever the word was I was supposed to say. Yeah. So anyway, what was I?
Talking about your desk.
So I forgot the Blackbird. I cannot pass my computer through the Blackbird to the Atem switcher. Cannot do it. Like it will not, no matter how I set the EDID. And I had a whole bunch of stuff torn out of the Blackmagic, and I was like, I don't understand why why did I do that? Like, I'm going to fix it all, make it all great. And then I was up until very early yesterday trying to get it to work again, and then realized I was wrong. So anyway, So now I'm rewiring things again, but in the good news, the Blackmagic can go to so many other monitors. That's why there were so many things I wasn't using in it.
I was about to say it's a good thing that the Blackbird, you're not just like, well, and so the moral of the story is I bought another Blackbird.
No. I actually probably don't need another Blackbird now. I can probably just serve monitors with